The wilderness of Northern California is beautiful, vast, and completely unforgiving. In the winter, the Plumas National Forest becomes a frozen wasteland where a single mistake can cost you your life. But the story you are about to hear isn't just about a mistake in the snow. It's a story about a sequence of events so bizarre, so completely devoid of human logic, that investigators still call it the American Dyatlov Pass. 5 grown men, a college basketball game, a simple drive home, and a wrong turn that led to a slow, agonizing, and inexplicable descent into hell. This is the tragic and terrifying mystery of the Yuba County 5. To understand the sheer madness of this case, you first need to understand the victims. They were known in their hometown of Yuba City, California, simply as the Boys. They were a close-knit group of 5 friends, ranging in age from 24 to 32. There was Ted Weiher, 32 years old, a gentle giant who stood nearly 6 feet tall. He was friendly, deeply loved his family, and would wave to strangers on the street. Then there was Jack Madruga, 30 years old. Jack was a proud man. He was an Army veteran and the owner of the turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego that the boys drove everywhere. Jack loved that car more than anything. Bill Sterling, 29, was deeply religious and spent most of his time reading the Bible or visiting the library. Jackie Hoot, 24, was the youngest of the group. He had a slight speech impediment and clung to Ted Weiher like a protective older brother. All 4 of these men dealt with mild intellectual disabilities. They were high-functioning, held jobs, and lived with their parents, but they thrived on routine. Routine was their safety net. But the 5th member of the group was different. Gary Mathias was 25 years old. He did not have an intellectual disability. Gary was a highly intelligent U.S. Army veteran who had served in Germany. However, Gary battled severe schizophrenia. He had a history of violent psychotic breaks and had even assaulted his own family in the past. But for the last 2 years, Gary had been on strong medication. He was stable, working, and had become a core member of the group. They were inseparable, and their absolute favorite thing in the world was basketball. They played for a local team called the Gateway Gators, sponsored by a rehabilitation program. And on Saturday, February 25, 1978, they were scheduled to play the biggest game of their lives in a Special Olympics tournament. The winner got a free week in Los Angeles. The boys had even laid out their uniforms on their beds the night before. They wouldn't have missed that game for the world. But before their big game on Saturday, the boys wanted to watch a college basketball game. On Friday night, February 24th, they all piled into Jack Madruga's beloved Mercury Montego. They drove 50 miles north from Yuba City to the town of Chico to watch the local university team play. The drive was easy. Highway 99 is a straight, flat, well-lit road. The boys were in high spirits. Their team won the game. As the crowds poured out of the gymnasium around 10 in the evening, the boys were hungry. They stopped at Bear's Market, a small convenience store in downtown Chico, just 3 blocks from the college. The clerk remembered them clearly because they arrived just before closing time. They bought 1 Hostess cherry pie, 1 Hostess lemon pie, a Snickers bar, a Marathon bar, and 2 bottles of Pepsi. It was 10:15 p.m. The boys walked out of the store, got back into the Montego, and drove away. All they had to do was drive 50 miles straight south on Highway 99 back to their warm beds in Yuba City. But they didn't go south. For reasons that defy all logic, they drove east. They drove directly toward the dark, freezing, treacherous mountains of the Plumas National Forest. The next morning, the parents of the 5 men woke up to empty houses. The uniforms laid out on the beds were untouched. The boys had missed their tournament. Panic immediately set in. These were not men who stayed out late. They did not party. They were strictly bound by their routines. The families called the police, and one of the largest search operations in California history began. The police searched the route between Chico and Yuba City, expecting to find the car crashed in a ditch. But the roads were clear. 3 days passed with no sign of the men. Then, a bizarre breakthrough occurred. A man named Joseph Shans came forward with a story that would twist this missing persons case into a supernatural nightmare. On the exact night the boys disappeared, Joseph Shans had been driving up a remote, unpaved mountain logging road in the Plumas National Forest to check on his cabin. He was 70 miles away from where the boys should have been. At around 5:30 in the evening, Shans's car got stuck in the deep snow. While trying to dig it out, he experienced a mild heart attack. In terrible pain, Shans sat in his freezing car, leaving the engine running for heat. Hours passed. Then, around 11:30 at night, he saw headlights in the rearview mirror. A car pulled up and stopped behind him. It was a turquoise and white Mercury Montego. Shans later told police he saw a group of people get out of the car. He heard voices. He got out of his car and yelled for help. But the moment he called out, the voices stopped dead. The headlights of the Montego were instantly turned off. Silence fell over the freezing mountain. Shans yelled again. Nothing. It was as if the people in the dark had frozen in place. Hours later, Shans claimed he saw a pickup truck pull up nearby. He heard more voices. He yelled for help again. Once again, the lights turned off and the voices ceased. Delirious from pain and the freezing cold, Shans hallucinated seeing a woman holding a baby in the dark. By morning, Shans miraculously found the strength to walk 8 miles down the mountain to a lodge to get help. As he walked, he passed the abandoned Mercury Montego. It was empty. On February 28th, a park ranger acting on Shans's tip found the car. It was sitting exactly where Shans had seen it, deep in the mountain wilderness, stranded at an elevation of 4,400 feet. When investigators arrived, the mystery didn't unravel. It deepened into madness. Jack Madruga, the owner of the car, hated the mountains. He had no map. The road they were on was a treacherous dirt path that locals wouldn't even drive on in the winter. Yet, the undercarriage of the low-riding Montego had no damage. No dents, no mud scrapes. The police noted that whoever drove the car up that pitch-black mountain road drove it with the precision of a professional stunt driver. The car was resting in a small snowdrift, but it was not hopelessly stuck. 5 strong men could have pushed it out in 2 minutes. The gas tank was a quarter full. The engine worked perfectly, but the keys were missing. And strangely, one of the windows was rolled down, letting the freezing snow blow directly into the car. Inside, police found the wrappers from the Hostess pies and the empty Pepsi bottles they had bought in Chico. There were no signs of a struggle. No blood. No muddy footprints leading into the woods. The snow had wiped the slate clean. 5 men had parked a perfectly good car in the middle of nowhere, and simply vanished into the freezing night, wearing only light jackets and sneakers. The police launched a massive ground and air search. They brought in dogs, helicopters, and men on horseback. But severe blizzards hit the mountains, dumping feet of snow and forcing the search to a halt. The families were left in agonizing suspense for months. It wasn't until June, when the mountain snow finally began to melt, that the true horror of the Yuba County 5 was revealed. 19 miles further up the mountain road from where the car was abandoned, there was a Forest Service trailer, a shelter used by hikers and rangers. On June 4th, a group of motorcyclists riding near the trailer noticed a terrible smell. The front window of the trailer had been smashed in. When authorities opened the door, they walked into a scene that still haunts investigators to this day. Lying on a bed inside the trailer was the body of Ted Wire, the gentle giant. He was wrapped tightly from head to toe in 8 different blankets. His shoes were missing, and his feet were severely frostbitten, showing advanced stages of gangrene. But the autopsy revealed the most disturbing fact of the entire case. Ted Wire had not died the night they disappeared. Based on the growth of his beard and his massive weight loss, the medical examiner determined that Ted had lived inside that freezing trailer for anywhere between 8 to 13 weeks. He had slowly starved to death, losing nearly 100 pounds. But he shouldn't have starved. The circumstances inside and outside that trailer make absolutely no sense. Let's look at the facts. Fact 1. Ted Wire starved to death. Yet just outside the trailer, in an unlocked storage shed, investigators found enough dehydrated food and canned meals to feed all 5 men for an entire year. The shed was not hidden. The food was right there. But neither Ted nor anyone else had brought that food inside. Fact 2. Ted died of severe hypothermia. Yet, sitting right next to the trailer was a massive commercial propane tank connected to the heating system. All anyone had to do was walk outside and turn the valve to fill the trailer with warm, life-saving heat. Nobody turned the valve. Furthermore, investigators found unlit matches inside the trailer and plenty of paper and wood. They never started a fire. They sat in the pitch black in sub-zero temperatures and froze. Fact 3. Someone else had been in the trailer with Ted. Investigators found that about 12 cans of military key rations had been opened and consumed. But they were not opened with a knife or a rock. They were opened using a P3 Ada highly specialized military can opener. Only 2 men in the group had military experience, Jack Madruga and Gary Mathias. But Jack Madruga was not in the trailer. Ted Wire's shoes were gone. But sitting on the floor of the trailer were the tennis shoes belonging to Gary Mathias. The discovery of Ted Wire launched a renewed search of the surrounding area. The results were gruesome. Following the road back toward where the car had been found, searchers discovered the remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling. They were about 4 miles from the trailer. They lay on opposite sides of the road. Autopsies showed they had died of hypothermia on the long walk in the dark. Jack Madruga's fingers were still clutching his car keys. A few days later, a local man found a backbone and a pair of shoes in the brush. It was all that remained of the youngest boy, Jackie Hoot. His clothes were found nearby, torn apart by animals. 4 men accounted for 4 tragic deaths. But what about Gary Mathias? Gary, the Army veteran. Gary, the man who knew how to use the P38 can opener. Gary, the man whose shoes were left in the trailer. Gary was never found. To this day, almost 50 years later, Gary Mathias remains a missing person. What truly happened on the night of February 24th, 1978? The theories are as dark as the Plumas National Forest itself. Did Gary Mathias, who had been off his schizophrenia medication for days, suffer a violent psychotic break? Did he hijack the car, drive his terrified friends into the mountains, and lead them on a death march through the snow? Or were they fleeing from someone? Remember the witness, Joseph Shans, who heard voices and saw lights turn off the moment he asked for help. Were the boys chased up that mountain by locals? Did they abandon the car in a blind panic and run into the woods to hide, eventually getting lost in the blizzard? Some psychologists point to a phenomenon called group panic. The boys, heavily reliant on routine, were suddenly plunged into an unfamiliar, terrifying situation. Without a clear leader, they made a series of irrational decisions that compounded into a fatal tragedy. They broke into the trailer, but perhaps out of fear of getting in trouble for stealing, they refused to turn on the gas or open the shed for food. They chose to follow the rules of society, even as they starved to death in the wilderness. We will likely never know the truth. The Plumas National Forest keeps its secrets buried under the snow. The American Dyatlov Pass stands as a haunting reminder of the fragility of the human mind. 5 friends went out to watch a basketball game. They bought a few snacks, laughed together, and then drove off the edge of the known world, leaving behind a mystery that defies reason, logic, and time itself. Thank you for investigating with Shadow Tailies. If you have a theory about what drove these men up that mountain, leave it in the comments below. And remember to subscribe. The dark history of the world is vast, and we are just getting started.